Hello everyone, I'm Grim, a freelance artist, and this week I'm going to tell you about how I do dramatic lighting. We'll go over the rules of thumb that I follow, and I'm going to demo creating each type of lighting. I love doing any sort of dramatic shading in art, and I know it's something that my artist friends know me for, and any commission clients, so I figured it would be fun to give a little insight into how I go about it. In general, I follow 3 rules of thumb when I do my shading to make it dramatic. 1, I have lots of contrast between the shadow and light. I make sure there's a noticeable difference between the value and color of the shadows and of the highlights. I try to set the mood of the piece with the color. If it's a warmer, softer scene, I use warm lights. If it's colder and harsher, I use cold lights. This is just talking about the color temperature. And I pick an interesting light source, if I can. Now, with those rules of thumb in mind, let's get into some common lighting scenarios that will really help to make a piece dramatic. I'm going to be demoing these different scenarios with a sketch I did of one of my characters the other week. And as an overall note, you can and should combine these techniques and lighting scenarios where you can. The first scenario is rim/backlighting. I like doing backlighting because it's very quick and easy, but not as versatile. Generally, when you back or rim light a piece, you have the light source behind your subject and the light wraps around the edges of them. This is because of the way that light bounces around in real life. And with art, you can push the boundaries of this a bit to carve out shapes that might have otherwise gotten lost. For example, I do that with this sketch with the edges of the ear, nose, and his right side of his jaw. When I do not know how to light a piece, I usually do this because it's so much faster. As a note, you might need to add a second layer of shading to make sure the piece doesn't look too flat. For that second layer, I either go with where shadows would be a bit thicker and darker, or I act like there's a secondary light and just top light the piece, since oftentimes in real life there is more than one source of light casting shadows. I also do that a little bit with subtle secondary highlights to emphasize the parts of the face that come forward, like the bridge of the nose and the cheeks. I find that backlighting can work really well for drama if you do it with a harsh color, and gentle nostalgia or bittersweetness with a warm color. For example, in this piece, I imagine maybe my character just had a horrible revelation dropped on him in the warmly lit nighttime city streets. The next scenario is side lighting. Side lighting is exactly what it says on the tin. The light source is to the side of the subject. This creates a cool effect where you cut the subject in half, and it can be really useful if you want to bring out the feeling of them wanting to hide or suddenly having something exposed, quite literally bringing an idea to light. This is another one where you sometimes might need a second layer of shading, like rim/backlighting, but you can get away with less. However, this is a technique that is tricky because you need to know the 3D forms going on in your piece. If you do not have a solid grasp of perspective and the 3-dimensional shapes your character is made out of, this one is going to be hard. Generally, I would also suggest you work from big to medium to small shapes with this one. Focus on getting overall things like the sphere of the head right and the cylinder of the neck. Then you can get into nitty-gritty carving out the detail of the nose, eyes, mouth, and eventually the hair too. And the third scenario is using an interesting light color/source. This one is fun because you can bring an interesting light color into pretty much any piece you want. You just need to justify it. For this one, I used green because it's a really unnatural color, and I put the light down below to give the effect of, say, a glowing magical tome or effect coming from below. I also try to use complementary or opposite colors for my shading and lights if I can in these scenarios. That way, it just really drives home the contrast point. In this particular piece, I used purple shadows and green highlights, and that way they just bounce off of each other. They don't blend together. And lastly, if I need to, I use a tone curve adjustment layer to bring my colors together a bit more until I think they look good. If you don't know what that does, basically it gives you a graph where you get to adjust the value of red, green, and blue separately. It's pretty cool. Play with it. It's not as scary as you think, I promise. And that's all of the lighting scenarios I have for you to give you some ideas of how you can start lighting your pieces dramatically. If you have any other tricks you like using, absolutely share them in the comments below so we can amass a bunch of art knowledge together. Thank you so much for watching. I hope these rules of thumb help you make more dramatic lighting, and if you have other burning art questions, feel free to ask in the comments below. I love getting to learn stuff and share what I know with other people. In the meantime, don't forget to like and subscribe, as that is how YouTube measures whether or not to show this video to other people. For now though, thank you again for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye!